This is the TM22 Standard/Cadet. The reason I say slash is because the only difference between the two versions is one comes with a cheek piece and one does not. Now I'm borrowing this cheek piece from a different Daria TM22 because I got the standard one without it, but it really doesn't matter. The actual gun itself is the same, except for the price. This is a rifle that is sub $200 Canadian. I paid about $126 or $130 US, which is equivalent to I think about $180, $190-ish Canadian, plus shipping costs. There is a version of this that is called the Cadet, as opposed to the standard, which is this one, which is the exact same, except you get the included cheek piece, which retails, I should say, for about 300 Canadian. Now, very briefly, we'll go over the features of this rifle. It is a TM22, which means it takes TM22 pattern magazines, kind of. This is the first big problem with the TM22, Standard/Cadet. Daria has decided to go with a different magazine operation compared to every other TM22 variant. As you can see, it has this lever, very similar to a lot of standard looking rifles, and it locks into this back piece, into this notch that is right here. Now you can also see this little cutout here is where the normal TM22 mag release lies. So this is a new notch. That also means that all existing TM22 magazines that came out before this rifle do not have this notch, so they are incompatible with this. Now you can technically file away, it is just plastic, and create a groove for the notch to sit in. But if you don't do it just right, it's not going to work at all, because either the rounds are going to be too low and therefore they're not going to be picked up, or the magazine is going to be too high and it's going to be blocking the bolt. I tried to do that and I couldn't get it perfectly right. Now that alone might kill it for some people, because that means the 15 and the 25 round magazines that are available with this gun do not yet have the notch. New magazines apparently will have the notch, but they're not in stores yet, and so you're basically just stuck with the one magazine that it came with that's 10 rounds, which really sucks. Now in terms of the controls, you have a crossbolt safety. This one is at the back of the trigger guard. This is my least preferred style of crossbolt safety. I prefer them like the TM22 up here, but it's fine, it works. The stock itself is all polymer, as you might expect, and it's not a very high quality polymer either. It's quite hollow. I could probably break this if I really wanted to. And honestly, if someone fell on this, except maybe a small child, I would expect it to crack. Without this cheek riser, the iron sights are perfectly leveled. The iron sights are this little notch at the back and this giant post at the front. However, if you want to put a dot on this, having the cheek riser is really helpful, because otherwise even a low profile mount is going to be slightly too high, and instead of doing a cheek weld, you're going to be doing a chin weld. Now, of course, the rest of the stock is polymer. You have one bolt here. You just unscrew this and the stock comes off, and you have a little spot of Picatinny that's molded into it. That really, I mean, you're not going to put any foregrips on this. What it's really going to be used for is a bipod, if you want to use one. Now there is no threaded barrel whatsoever. There is just this plastic piece that houses the front sight post, and that's all you get. Now the receiver itself is entirely polymer. The bolt is metal, the barrel is metal, and that's all you get. Everything else about this is polymer. And normally I wouldn't care, but this feels like they've gone a step too far. Taking a look at the stock taken apart, we can see how simple it really is. There is literally just the trigger pack, which is also made of polymer, and the magazine well. The only metal things in here are the hammer and the firing pins and the springs. The actual trigger shoe is polymer as well. As you can see on the inside, there is a metal bolt, but it is not riding against any metal anything. It is all just polymer. Now, important to note with the trigger pack is that when you're putting the trigger pack in, it sits in like this, and you have two screws that keep it together. But what you're screwing into is also polymer. so you can't tighten it too much just in case it breaks. Now there are metal nuts in the little polymer shelves, but again, the stress is on the polymer. So if you tighten it too much, you could crack the polymer around it. And so with all of that out of the way, what does that mean for the shooting experience? Well, the shooting experience can be summed up as boring. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. The rifle is inherently basic, right? There's no bells and whistles, there's no fancy anything about it. It is the epitome of a basic 22 LR rifle. There are a lot of 22 rifles that you shoot and it just feels kind of cool or it feels fun to shoot. This is not one of those. This is one of those rifles that you shoot because you need a semi-automatic 22 LR to just function and shoot 22 LR in a semi-automatic fashion. That's it. Put a scope on it, put a dot on it, use the irons. It doesn't really matter. It's just the nature of the rifle and the way it is. Now, in terms of the accuracy, I was able to get pretty good accuracy, but I didn't really thoroughly test it like I did with the Ruger Precision. And the reason is because I don't really think that matters for this rifle, and I'll get into more later, but I did test it with Federal Auto Match at 100 meters, and honestly, that's not bad. You can tell me what you think of it, but I feel like for how cheap the rifle is, that's actually not that bad. The controls themselves are pretty good. There's absolutely nothing overcomplicated about the controls. They're very easy to use, very intuitive to use. And the trigger is actually not bad. It's a heavier pull than other TM22s that I've used, but it also has a very forceful reset. And in my opinion, if you're going to have a heavy trigger, that is the best offset to the heavy trigger, is a forceful reset, which is very important for teaching new shooters. Again, we'll get to that in a second. The trigger shoe is plastic, and it's a cheaper plastic, but it feels good enough, and it's a good shape. I had no problems using it with fingers or gloves. It worked well every time I've used it. However, I did experience one problem that came up multiple times, and that was the 9th round on a magazine. I really don't know why this was happening, but I would say on about 30% of the mags that I shot, the 9th round failed to load and then shoot. I really have no idea why it did that, but it did. I'm guessing it was just a quirk of my rifle, maybe a combination of my magazine and my rifle. I really can't say, I don't know, but it happened, and I don't see this complaint being thrown out very much right now from what I've looked at in terms of reviews, but I'm just going to say that be aware that this is something that could happen. But again, like I say with all of my reviews, go check out other reviews of this rifle specifically so you can get a broader understanding of reliability. Now finally, that leads me to who is this rifle for? And I do this kind of segment with every single review that I've ever done of who is this rifle for? This one is very, very, very narrowly tailored to two kinds of people. There have been rifles I've reviewed in the past where I can say, well, it's really only for 2 or 3 types of people, but those types of people are typically very broad. The 2 types of people that this rifle is for are in comparison very narrow. So, for example, the first type of person is someone who is brand new to shooting. And I don't mean like someone that has shot in the past very sparingly, but they kind of know firearms. I mean like brand spanking new to shooting. This is a good rifle for that because it is extremely lightweight, which means if you're teaching youth, this is very beneficial for learning how to hold the firearm. Its simple design means that no one is going to become overcomplicated with the controls. They literally just need to know where the trigger is, the charging handle, the mag release, and the safety, and they are all the simplest versions of all of those things. So it's very intuitive to use from that perspective. The iron sights are also very simple to use. It's a notch and a front post. Really simple to understand, and if you put a dot on it, it's even more simple. And of course, it's shooting 22, which is the best caliber for teaching brand spanking new shooters how to shoot. You really can't go wrong if you're buying this as a cheap entry point for teaching someone new to shoot. And while I would say it's generally going to be better for younger shooters, it absolutely could work with anyone of any age to teach them how to shoot. Although my suggestion would be, if you are doing this, maybe bring another firearm with you for them to step up to. Now, the other kind of person is someone that needs a 22 LR firearm, whether it be semi-auto, bolt, or whatever, and they need it to be extremely cheap because they are very tight on money and they need it for some purpose. What that purpose is, I don't know. I would assume it's probably land management with some very small game. This one will work. It's accurate enough for you to hit your targets at wherever they are, and you really want to do it on a budget. This is probably the firearm for you, just because it is so cheap and semi-auto, so if you do miss a shot, you can get a rapid follow-up shot. But that's it. Those two kinds of people. No one else. If someone were to come up to me and ask about this rifle specifically, the first question I would ask would be, do you own any 22 LR firearms right now? And if they said yes, my immediate answer would be no, I do not recommend it. And the reason I say that is because if you have already learned how to shoot a firearm and you are not in dire straits for the need of a firearm, for small game on your land or whatever, then it is worth saving up the extra $100, $200 to get something like a Savage 64 Precision or a used 1022. That is it for this video. I hope you enjoyed. I hope I helped make your decision a bit easier. I have a couple more TM22 videos coming out. There's just a lot of TM22 stuff. And then we'll see what comes after that. So, that is it for this video. Thank you very much for watching, and have a good day.